parents moved me to a new town, I was just entering the 6th grade. I was upset. I'm not gonna lie. To this day, I wonder what might have happened if I had stayed with the friends I made growing up, and how different my life might be if I went through my formative years with them and graduated high school together. I'll never know. What I do know is that puberty happened. New in town, new strange feelings and energies swirling throughout, and in a desperate act of grabbing all the attention I could, I became the class clown. It was a great feeling, still not gonna lie. It was my gift to my classmates. It was my endless disruption for the teacher. And finally, it was my ultimate downfall. But I used to love to make people laugh. I still do, and I think I've still got it. But back then, it was really a terrible disruption for my poor teacher who was just trying to do her job. And for me, it was my outlet. It was my way of trying to be relevant. And I wanted attention, and I wanted it bad enough to constantly act like a fool, whatever the cost. But the laughter I received was the love I wanted, so as long as I got that reaction, I saw no reason to stop. Life was strange. It still is. But it's also beautiful. And now I want to share how I went from being a class clown to an outcast, and finally to an inspiration for the other kids who were also just looking for someone to give them the love and attention they so desperately craved. I acted out so bad that my teacher finally threw in the towel. She had tried all kinds of ways to discipline me and found that the only real solution was to finally get me out of her class. I spent the last couple of months in the classroom next door. Suddenly, the magic stopped. That teacher was very strict and didn't put up with any nonsense. I was essentially cast aside and told to do busy work until the school year ended. I think I had a notebook or something with activities to fill out which would be checked by the teacher by the end of the day. It wasn't even standard curriculum. I was simply given something to do and told to do it. Quietly. The year finally came toward an end, but not before my own final insult. It turns out that as a reward to the graduating 6th grade class, they were all going to go on some field trips for every single day of the last 5 days. What? Wait, I want to go. Nope, you're not going, shouted my former classmates. I still showed up for the last week though, lonely, depressed, deflated, and doomed. But then, that very Monday morning, I was given a slip of paper by my now substitute teacher. He said, "Since you're not going on any of those field trips, you'll need to go here." I looked at the paper and all I could make out was K1. I don't think he stood by to elaborate for me. In fact, I didn't matter. I wasn't his problem at that point. He and the other staff and kids were getting ready and loading up on the morning buses to go on their field trip. I think I went to the admin offices because I was scared and confused. "What does this mean?" I asked someone in the office. They said something like, "You need to go all the way down the hall toward that last building, and then the other hall all the way down, and then look for the door that says K1 on it." And with that, I shuffled off. A lot was going through my little brain. I was feeling self-pity, of course, jealousy of the other kids going on field trips, and then just general anxiety about the mystery of K1. I finally found the door and tried to be as quiet as possible when I entered. Here's what I saw. A teacher was holding up a picture book and reading to a bunch of little, tiny kids sitting on the ground in a semicircle around her. Kindergarten, K1. She saw me and motioned for me to take a seat toward the back of the room. I didn't have to cross in front of the kids, so I quietly tried to make myself fit into a tiny chair that looked like it was for dolls. Some of the kids saw me, but then turned their attention back toward the teacher, who was so great at engaging them with story time. At some point, the kids broke off into a different activity, and the teacher came over to warmly greet me. Here's where it gets tricky. I distinctly remember that she was caught off guard because even when I handed her the note, I could see that her reaction was a bit shocked, and she was probably as confused as I was. At least that's how it looked. We exchanged names and I woefully asked her what I was doing there. I really didn't know. I feel very emotional even thinking about this now, because I know that she spared me the heartache and the truth of the matter. It was my punishment. It was my other teacher's way of saying, "Hey, you want to act like a child? I'll make sure you get treated like one while the rest of your class goes off and enjoys the rewards of all the awesome field trips. But as I say, she spared me. She took pity. She didn't even say anything of the sort. In fact, she simply said, "Looks like you're going to be my helper for the rest of the week." She immediately welcomed me with open arms, a refugee in her home. She did everything she could to make me feel important, not just to her, but to her kids. I was introduced to the class, and I ended up truly becoming everyone's little helper. It changed my life. It changed theirs. I remember sitting with them at lunch and playing with them at recess and reading stories to them and helping them and the teacher with all of their little daily activities. By the next day and the next day after that, all of my former classmates would see me in the morning and rub in my face all the cool things they got to do and were still going to do. But I secretly didn't care. Not even just a little. Seriously, going to that kindergarten class was more of a sanctuary for me, a secret refuge from all of my former shenanigans. And I'll never forget this one kid. He wore green corduroy pants and a green and white striped collared shirt. It was the 4th day, and all I remember was how quick he and so many of the others took a liking to me, like a big brother. Only for this one kid in particular, I meant more. He took my hand in his. He's all of 5 years old, mind you, and I'm probably 12 at the time. My growth spurt had already made me feet taller than him. And with big, sparkling eyes, he says, "Will you be my daddy?" It caught me off guard. I didn't even have a chance to respond before he said, "'Cause I don't have one." And with that, he hugged me, tight. I hugged him back with all my strength. I didn't even know how to process the tremendous depth of sadness and pain in his heart. And whatever connection we made in less than a week was all it took for him to find what he wanted, what he needed, what I needed. On the 5th and last day, the teacher and I agreed that because the kids took such a quick liking to me, a lot of them would probably react in a bad way if they knew I was leaving. That woman was so intuitive. She was a lighthouse of hope and joy for those kids. So she said for their benefit that once they all laid down for nap time and she thought that they were sufficiently out of it, she would give me a signal and I would walk out of the class for the last time. The time came. I quickly grabbed my backpack, said my goodbyes to the teacher, and surveyed one last time the fragile little humans who I would probably never see again. There they were, resting on the floor. They seemed to be fast asleep. 20 or so souls flying through their fantasies, perhaps dreaming of unicorns and dragons and mystical places, or maybe of simple things like eating all of their favorite desserts they could imagine getting their little hands on, or even just of someone who they could look up to and call their own, who would listen to their hopes and dreams and guide them and give them hope when they weren't at school. I remember feeling emotional about leaving them. They and the teacher affected me in ways I could never have imagined. As I crept toward the door, one of them woke up and that stirred the rest. Before I knew it, they were shouting my name. "Where are you going?" They demanded to know. Too late. The teacher came clean. "He has to go, children." A clamor of questions and quivering little voices. Some of them started crying. I probably cried too. And my little friend jumped up and hugged me so hard as if his entire life depended on it and begged me not to go. With the help of the teacher and her pacifying words, I finally made my dramatic exit. She wished me well and gave me a hug, and that was it. That was my final week of 6th grade. And now you might even be asking, well, did you ever get back in touch with any of those kids? The teacher? My answer is no, I did not. As you will come to find out, I had a rough journey ahead of me, and as the days and weeks stretched into years, the whole thing just became part of my story. I don't know what happened to those kids or the teacher. I can only hope and trust that her kindness, her sincerity for creating a warm environment for them and for me alike, had a ripple effect, the way that that kind of energy does. And I can only hope that my little friend who was so fond of wearing green got all the love he deserved and more. Later on, as a young adult, I did want to go back and apologize to my original 6th grade teacher. The hell I must have put her through, I can now only imagine. And what of all my classmates, the ones who spent their last week on vacation? I don't know. I didn't end up going to middle school or high school with any of them. I knew them all exactly one school year. Life is strange. And so what does kindness mean? What effect does it have on you and me and anyone who is gracious enough to be kind or receive kindness? Do any of those kids remember me? Who's to say? I'm reminded of the great author and poet Maya Angelou, who said, "I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel." And that's all that really matters, right? It's not for my ego to want recognition. It's not for my karma to be better. It's for recognizing that we are all in this thing together. And even the kindest glance can change the world. It can change your world. Not so long ago, I was getting up and going about my day, leaving the house in my car. I was in a really bad place emotionally, and I had no one to talk to. I don't even know if I wanted to talk to anyone. I just wasn't feeling right. Well, as I'm driving down the neighborhood street, I make eye contact with a young mother who was pushing a stroller. I swear our eyes only connected for barely a second, but her absolute genuine smile, I mean like unequivocally wholesome smile, was all it took. It seemed almost divine. Her whole face radiated with kindness, not just her eyes. Her smile, that brief little glance, was all it took. I became very emotional. I kept driving. And from then on, all I could think was that it was the universe sending me a signal. Call it God, the infinite intelligence, or if you don't believe in anything else, just call it plain kindness. My heart was instantly filled with hope. My sadness was overcome with gladness. I couldn't help but feel better. If you can look at other people without using your ego, without judgment, you can see past the illusory exterior to their inner emotions, their soul. Again, if you don't believe in that, just believe that, as I've said in other videos, a person is not totally what they appear to be. They are a collection of intangible qualities that make up their personality. You only see them in their clothes and their accessories, and you see their persona, the face that they wear when in public. If you're lucky, you catch a glimpse of their real self. You get a genuine smile or a friendly voice or a hand that reaches out to you in goodwill. Throughout my life, and I think yours too, as you gain more life experience, you will see that people aren't strangers. Strangers are strangers. Listen, you have every right to keep to yourself, and not everyone wants to be jovial and outgoing with everyone else. I get it. And you should definitely trust your good instincts, which I'll talk about in another video, about the instant feeling you get about a person that lets you know that there's danger and that you should use caution. But set that aside for a moment, and imagine the possibilities of taking a chance on just being kind to someone you don't know. I've spent many years doing just that, and I've come to a definite conclusion through my experience and through meeting people from all over the world. We are, in fact, more alike and have more in common than you probably have even thought about. In spite of our exteriors, in spite of how much we present ourselves on the spectrum from unapproachable all the way up to being an open book, whatever we think we look like to each other, we share some fundamentally core things. Everyone has a past, and everyone has a future that they hope will be better. Everyone has experienced pain and suffering and death and love and loss. But one thing that really comes through when I meet people is how lonely they can be. It's amazing what stories people will share with you when you show kindness to them. I don't mean to say that people are walking around the earth completely in solitude every day, all the time. Though if you are lonely, I encourage you to go out and meet other people. Exchange your stories. There's a lot of good people in this world. I'm sure you're one of them. But just think of the story I just told you about my feelings of turmoil and loneliness, leaving the house, driving past that mother. It turns out we need each other. What would happen if someone was kind to you? What happened when someone was kind to you? Take that feeling, harness it, feel it completely through your body, then give it to someone else. See what happens. Now go be kind to someone else. Do something kind for a perfect stranger. You're spreading that beautiful, hopeful feeling into the world. Let that be your simple gift. The cost can be measured in the little time it took, and the price will be the joy that you spread. And finally, whatever you do, wherever you are, keep going. I believe in you.